So here in chapter 6, we're going to start with the idea of modular programming. If you think back to all of the applications you've designed, to all of the code that you have written, it is what is referred to as concrete sequential. Top to bottom, left to right, in that order exclusively. There hasn't been a ton of deviation that we have built into our programs. They run pretty much from top to bottom, left to right, in that order without any deviation. And we have been successful doing that to date. That much is true. But on some of the larger pieces of programming that you have done, if you think about things like the vending machine, for example, in recent history, or the choose your own adventure from right before the midterm, certainly things even in the end of chapter challenges where you've got like the star search is one I think is pretty explanatory of this, where it is that you are doing a procedure time and time and time again. You, in structural, concrete, sequential programming, top to bottom, left to right, in that order exclusively, had to repeat things with just one really small alteration in order for those pieces of program, for those applications to be able to run. So what did that mean? In the star search question, what you had to do was create loops specifically for each judge. So you had 5 looping mechanisms, one for each of the 5 judges. Potentially in the vending machine end of chapter challenge, you would have had to paint the vending machine several times. So that means you would have had to potentially repeat the output that you created for the vending machine time and time and time again. And with a few of the applications that I saw, that meant taking what would have essentially been, including all of the white space and everything else for the vending machine, the actual structural elements of the vending machine. What that meant was taking an application that probably could have been done in 100 or 200 lines and turning it into an application that was potentially 3 or 4 or 5 times that. So the thing we're focusing on here with modular programming is the idea of reusability. What happens if, as a developer, I can say, hey, this is a procedure I'm going to do time and time and time again? What happens if I don't repeat the code? What happens if I just call those lines of code from top to bottom, left to right, in that order exclusively, but I call to those lines of code repeatedly to do the same job without having to repeat the same code over and over again? And once we get the hang of this, this turns out to be peanut butter and chocolate. This turns out to be sliced bread. So as a developer, you get to say, I get to do, the same amount of work as my 500 line vending machine in closer to 100 lines. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. As developers, we get to say, so let me get this straight. Once I have this procedure down, I can take the sign-in page for YouTube. I have to upload these to YouTube later, so that's fresh here on my mind. If I can take the sign-in page for YouTube and extend it to other properties in the Alphabet platform lineup. So to Google Search, to Gmail, to Google Photos, to everything else. Yeah, we can do that because once we have a procedure, once we have a block of code, a module that contains a certain set of work that it has to do, we can extend that time and time and time again without having to recode it. And you can see that here on page 305, as everybody excuses me while I squint my way down to it. What we're saying here in the idea of modular programming, again, this is on page 305, is that what we want our main to transform into is much less the sum and total of all of the lines of instruction that we are feeding to to make this program. So what we are going to do is kind of change the way we think about main from being where all of my code exists to where all of my code is called from. So int becomes here, like you can see. I believe it's over this way. I have to reverse everything for the camera. Instead of statement, 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 top to bottom, left to right in that order exclusively, what we really want is to call to a function. So you can see that here we have function 1, function 2, function 3, function 4. There's a lot of lights happening here. It's bleeding out my screen. I wasn't ready for that, guys. So you can see that instead of all of those same collected statements running in main, we have a much smaller main that has statement 1, 2, and 3. And that's because it is calling out to functions 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are doing the work and sending the results of that work back to main. And we're going to spend the rest of this chapter figuring out exactly what that means. So everything we do here is in service of modular programming design.